How's it going, fam? Welcome back to Erica's EDC, and today we are doing the full review of ZMax steel made by Zapp tooling. We're also doing the full review of the Comet made by Kyle over at the Scrawny Lumberjack. This is a design that I had a hand in designing, and I tested it for the whole month of September. I have a ton of feedback about it. I'm really excited, so we're gonna hop right into it, but there's a caveat, okay? I want to talk about dulling again. Now, before you're like, Erica, we already talked about this, hold on a second. There's a few things I want to share that I think you'll find interesting, and I have some knives laid out here, okay? So we have to talk about dulling in order for you to understand how ZMax works, and it is important. Also, I highly suggest checking out Alex's video that he recently did. It's called, like, exposing the biggest myth about knives or steel or something like that. Outdoors 55, Alex Garland, the famous dude. He made a video about chef's knives, and then he made a follow-up video about hardness, and he essentially made two knives in 1084 steel, I think it was. It was either 1080 or 1084, but I think it was 1084. And he did them at two different hardnesses and basically showed how they dull, how they deform with impact, talked about apex stability, all of that stuff, and it's super interesting, so I highly suggest checking it out. But it ties into what I'm about to talk to, which is funny because I set up the making of this video before even watching his, and I was like, man, we must be on the same wavelength. We're gonna talk about hardness correlation with dulling, apex stability, deformation, chipping, that kind of stuff, because it's very important, and ZMax performed differently than I thought it would, but it ties into this whole thing, okay? So we'll go over the whole dulling thing first, and I'll move these out of the way, and we'll go over the actual in-depth review of this knife and the design and everything. But let's talk about dulling for a second, okay? So ZMax steel is labeled, it is owned by Zapp tooling. However, it is literally just CPM Rex 86, not 76. I said 76 before and I meant 86. They both do exist, but for some reason I thought it was 80, I thought it was 76. Kyle corrected me. So ZMax steel, Zapp tooling owns it. It is CPM Rex 86, okay? This is a high-speed steel. It is not stainless. It has a good amount of tungsten in it. We've already gone over all that, but basically it is a very hard, very wear-resistant steel. This one is at 67 HRC. It can be brought all the way up to 70, okay? This steel, let's lower this down, dulled in the same fashion as Rex 121. Now, Rex 121, we have kind of like a spectrum here per usual, because if I'm on the spectrum, so does everything else. Everything else has to be. Just kidding, but I probably am. That's debatable. Okay, so we have two groupings of knives here, okay? On this side, moving down, these are all steels that, in my opinion, dull in a toothy manner, okay? On this side, we have knives that dull in a glassing out manner. Now you're probably really confused. You're like, why the hell is chippy ass Rex 121 in that column at the top? Here's why. When you use Carpenter's Maximate appropriately in your use, Maximate breaks down into a toothy edge. When you use Maximate inappropriately in your use, Maximate chips out. It is very hard. It has a high tungsten level, okay? You heat treat Maximate very, very hard. So when you use it correctly, it breaks down into a toothy serrated edge. When you use it incorrectly, it chips out. Rex 121. When you use Rex 121 correctly, it glasses out as you use it, but because it is a high tungsten, high hardness steel, it is a hard glassing out. We're going to go into that in a moment. When you use Rex 121 incorrectly, inappropriately, it chips out because it is very hard. It has a high tungsten level. It's a high speed tool steel. So when you use it incorrectly, inappropriately, it chips out. So these are very similar. When you use them inappropriately, they chip. When you use them appropriately, Rex 121 glasses out hard, and Maximate just breaks down into a more toothy edge. So let's kind of go in depth on this spectrum thing. So what I'm talking about is on this side right here, all of these steels, when you use them properly, they break down into a toothy edge, a varying level of a toothy edge, okay? So when you use 15V appropriately, it breaks down into a really toothy, aggressive working edge. Moving down from here, same thing with Rex 45, in my opinion. Keeps a nice, toothy working edge. Same with S30V, same with 3V. Now these are varying levels of tooth though, okay? Using all of these appropriately, Maximate after use will feel more toothy than maybe 3V, but they're still varying levels of toothy working edges as they dull. Over here, these are our glassing out steels, but it's varying levels. So because Rex 121 is so hard, in my opinion, if I had to pick between toothy or glassing out dullness, I would say Rex 121 actually glasses out as it dulls. However, because it's so hard, it's not a butter knife slick edge. Your finger kind of stutters. When you go like this and it starts to get dull, your finger, the apex is still kind of like catching steel, and you kind of stutter over that edge. There's no chipping, there's no damage, there's no nothing if you've used it appropriately. But it starts to glass out. It's just a catchy, kind of sticky version of glassing out, okay? Just like CPM S110V. I feel the same way about this steel. This steel holds a working edge for a really long time, in my opinion, but if I had to pick between the two categories, the way it dulls is again kind of that sticky, stuttering, but I guess smooth dulling. It's still sharp, and when you go like this, it still feels bitey. But it's not micro serrations like these, okay? So ZMax, from my month-long use, including sharpening, stropping, all of the things, this dulled appropriately, nearly identical to Rex 121. Also very similar to S110V. S110V does not have tungsten in it, so I think this just feels, you know, a little bit different, but it's still kind of that same category of like hard, glassy edge that still cuts, okay? ZMax literally felt identical to Rex 121 in its dulling. Down here, we also have glassy dulling edges, but we have, for example, CPM S45 VN and CPM S35 VN. So these two, if you remember my spectrum that I put up the other week, these two glass out real soft, okay? These will feel like butter knives. You start to use these and they get really literally soft and glassy. They will even sometimes like mush, okay? You won't really get, with appropriate use, any rolling, chipping, nothing. These edges are just going to like kind of smush up into themselves and feel like a freaking butter knife. You'll be able to run your finger right over it. It's going to have no bite to it whatsoever, okay? And you have to, you know, refresh that apex. The steels like these, this is also including like 154 CM. This is also including Nitro V, steels like that. When these dull, they dull into a soft, glassy edge, like it's toasted. You have to sharpen it. It's not going to cut very well for you, okay? So these all dull in a glassy manner, but these higher hardness steels have like a hard glassy edge that still cuts, as opposed to the steels that I just mentioned, S45, S35, etc., that get a soft glassy edge that like literally will not grab material, will not cut when dull, okay? Now, why is this? Well, I have a hypothesis that I think is part of this whole thing. Hardness, that's why I talked about Alex's video at the beginning of mine. Hardness, okay? Generally speaking, when we see S35 VN, S45 VN, 154 CM, Nitro V, those types of steels, when we see them, they're in a production setting. Most of the time, okay? We're seeing production knives. Production settings, we all know, typically do not run over 63, if you're lucky, 64 HRC, but I'm really talking like it's generally 60 to 63 HRC, okay? So when you get S35, S45, whatever, and it's from a production company, it's generally going to be between 60 and, if you're lucky, 63 HRC. So this steel is not only kind of glassy in nature, but then when it's kind of on the softer end, okay, it will get soft as it dulls. It feels like a soft, smooth, buttery edge because the steel itself is literally treated on the softer end. If you were to take CPM S45 VN, heat treat it to 64.5 or even 65 HRC nice and thin, it feels way more toothy than production, okay? Seriously. It's like night and day difference. But we're usually seeing these steels in a production setting. So in my opinion, most of the time when they dull, they're going to be buttery because they are a little bit, you know, kind of soft in nature. Then they're heat treated soft, and the end result is a smushy butter knife edge as it dulls. Okay? Is this kind of making sense? When you get steels like S110V, Rex 121, ZMax, these are either going to be by a custom maker or by a production knife company that has the capability to treat these properly. You have to remember, these high-speed steels, these high-hardness steels, there's no point in even working with them if you're going to treat them at 60 HRC because you're not unlocking the capabilities of the steel, okay? These have to be run at higher hardness to do what they are marketed to do, right? A lot of companies don't have the time or money or skill or machinery to tool and grind these steels, okay? So when we do see them in a production setting, they're typically going to be done right. Spyderco, for instance, okay? You're not going to find soft S110V. There would be no point. So when we do see it, it's either from a custom maker or a, you know, production knife company. They've done it right and they've done it hard. So when we see these steels and we use them, the way that they dull is a little more glassy, but it's that sticky, stuttery, still grabby dulling, okay? These have to be heat treated hard to be optimal. These these do not have to be heat treated hard to be optimal. S45, S35, they can be done at, 60, 61, 62 HRC, and they perform really well for the average user. They don't have to be hard, okay? These do. So when we go over here, it's kind of the same thing. We see a lot of CPM 3V in production knives and, production outdoors knives. We see a ton of CPM S30V, okay? Now, these are more toothy in nature. So even if you do a production optimal heat treat, again, 60, 61, 62, maybe 63 if you're lucky. These, as they dull, will be toothy because they are in nature, okay? They're at a decent hardness, and these steels, even from a production setting, because they do not demand what these do, these still have a toothy edge, kind of regardless of where you get them, as long as they're done properly, and these will have a toothy working edge as you use them, okay? So these steels here do not demand what these do. They're still fairly easy to work with. Production companies will use them, and they're toothy in nature, which is awesome. But again, as you move up, Rex 45, 15V Maximate, there's not that many companies that are going to use those steels. They are more demanding, they're more finicky, they need more belts, they need different heat treats, they need to be run at a higher hardness. So when we do see these ones, we're going to be seeing these from really good custom makers or really, really good production companies, and they're going to be hard. All right. So when you get up into these kind of super steels that can be chippy in nature already, and then they're run hard, this is where, if you use them properly, they will break down into an incredible toothy serrated edge. And if you use them improperly, because they're harder, they're going to chip. That's why everyone says that Maximate is chippy. A lot of people also have said 15V can be chippy. If you use them improperly, of course, they're heat treated hard. They're going to chip on you. But if you use them correctly, these will break down into such an amazing toothy serrated working edge on a microscopic level. It's incredible to use, okay? Does this kind of make sense, guys? I hope it does. Let me know if you have any questions. There's basically, again, on a spectrum, generally speaking, 2 types of dulling. I would pick what steel you're going to use next, depending on what type of dullness you like and what you're most comfortable with, okay? You also have to remember, sometimes steels that are chippy in nature don't respond as well to coarse stones, okay? Because if they're already chippy in nature, you're only going to microchip them further, okay? So remember that. Just like with the opposite, steels that are very soft in nature and glassy, you may want to leave them at a coarser edge so they have some type of grit to grab abrasive material and cut, okay? That was all touched on in my spectrum video that I did a little bit ago. Let me know if you have any questions. Now, let's hop into the review of the Comet. This thing is freaking dirty and gross, but let me just move some of these out of the way, because knowing myself, I would hurt myself. So we're just gonna move all of these out of the way here and focus on the Comet for the rest of the video. Okay. So the Scrawny Lumberjack Comet. This was designed by Kyle and I to basically be a gentleman's EDC knife that looked and felt like an outdoors kind of bushcraft knife, okay? We have a Coke bottle handle, flared bootay. This one has a tapered tang. Ergonomics are just spot on with this. Sharpened spine, kind of all of the cool things about an outdoors knife, but in a little tiny package that you can, you know, slip down in your pocket or wear on the belt. And it is slicey like an EDC blade and actually cuts. So this one is in ZMax. The ZMax performed incredibly well for me. The only thing that I kind of was thrown off by was, you know, the dulling like we just talked about. My guess was that this was going to dull in a more micro serration manner. I think partly because the name just sounds so cool, like Zapp tooling ZMax. I guess I just thought it was going to be kind of like a workhorse of an edge and not really glass out too much, and it was just going to micro serrate as I used it. That's not what happened. Like I said, it was just like the Rex 121 where using it appropriately, it got kind of that like stuttery glassy edge, but that's fine. The edge retention on this was not like above and beyond like Maximate. It was just really, really good. I had to sharpen it 2 times during the month, and both of the times that I sharpened it, it went incredibly well. This burred up so nicely. It was so easy to work with, super easy to deburr. I did one of the sharpenings on my KME. I did another one of the sharpenings on stones, which I recorded and put up for you guys. Burr came up nice, came off nice, took a nice, sharp, aggressive edge really, really fast. It was just an awesome knife to use. It responded to stropping really well. I used the sharp condition from Creeley Blades, and this just took to that wonderfully. It was just a really fun, good steel to use. Like I said, I thought that the edge longevity was going to be a little bit more than it was, but it was not bad in any capacity. Like I really, you know, as you can see, I use my knives a lot, and only having to sharpen 2 times in a month, not bad at all, okay? Could I have stropped those edges back? Probably, but I wanted to understand how this moved on the stones. It was incredible. I've said this before, the grain structure of ZMax felt really, really fine. I am assuming it is fine because it's a PM grade steel, so it's a powder metallurgy steel, okay? So that makes a finer grain structure anyway. But it felt extremely fine, extremely stable, and it actually felt as fine as something like ABL, which we know is like ultra fine grain structure. That's what this felt like. The apex stability was incredible on this, okay? Again, kind of referring to Alex's video, when we want knives for cutting tasks, harder is better, generally speaking, okay? We don't want soft steel because it will deform easier. With appropriate use, you can use a knife at 67 HRC like this one, not do dumb shit with it, and it will cut for a really long time. And generally, what we really want to do is focus on geometry, okay? Geometry is king. So if I, for instance, wanted ZMax and I wanted it a little bit, I wanted a little more apex stability, what could have happened is we could have beefed up behind the edge, okay? Left a little bit of a thicker BTE and given this more meat. We don't have to run it soft, okay? So, because I wanted to do slicing tasks with this is very, very thin. I think it's 5 or 8 thou BTE, so really, really thin, really, really hard. And it still didn't deform, roll, chip, nothing during my use because I didn't do anything stupid with it. But if I wanted to do something a little bit stupid with it, we wouldn't really want to soften it. We would want to beef up the geometry, okay? Soft steel doesn't really benefit much of anything, and nothing should be below 60 HRC in my opinion. Regardless of what steel it is, it just shouldn't be under 60, okay? Let's make steel great again. So this was incredible. Responded to sharpening and stropping incredibly well. Now, I kind of wish that I cleaned this off before the review so we could see the true patina, but ZMax is not a stainless steel, and you can see maybe right there, it definitely picked up patina. Now, some of this is grime as well, but it did stain. We have no rust or anything, just some patina, which is really cool. It did not take a patina super easy though. It's not like I could stick this in a steak and it will come out, you know, with all these blue hues. It was actually pretty stain resistant, but because we used it for a whole month straight, it definitely did pick up some coloration here. So maintenance on the steel itself, phenomenal. Highly, highly, highly recommend. It seems very, very stable. No chipping, no rolling, no nothing. Let's talk about the design a little bit, because this was the first time I used this design as well. This was a joy to use, guys. This design is kind of everything I talk about on the channel. You guys know that I'm a huge fan and advocate of kind of straight knives. I like when they have some like handle curve to them to fit the human hand, but I don't want anything crazy, because when I hold a knife, I typically want it to be an extension of my hand and my arm, okay? I want it to melt into my hand and feel like part of me. I use a knife a lot, okay? So I don't like crazy things. I don't like stuff that, you know, curves or recurves or tantos or whatever. This right here just literally melts in your hand and feels like an extension of your hand, okay? I'm also a huge fan of the tip of the knife being center line or around center line. So this was awesome to use because everything kind of just, especially when you hold it like this, lines right up. It was incredibly slicey when I used it, and I processed a ton of cardboard, kept a great edge. The Coke bottle handle feels really, really nice. The kind of dip here, this taper and such with the flare was actually super useful in taking this out of my... Wow, we've got some... I'm pretty sure these bugs are doing it right here. Yeah, they definitely are. Guys, can you go get a room? Look, they're attached to each other. They're like... Where's your mom's house? Okay, come on, guys. I don't want to hurt them because they're trying to make some babies. Oh my god. They're literally stuck to each other. Okay, well, what I was going to say, I don't want to disturb them anymore. What I was going to say is that taking the knife out of the sheath, this little area right here where this all sucks in was really useful to pull the knife out if like my t-shirt was over it or if I was working on something. The flare and everything, it just makes this little nook, I guess, for you to pinch grip and kind of pull the knife out. Little things like that matter to me. I know that probably sounds super cheesy and ridiculous and like it doesn't matter, but to me it does. It's something I was aware of and I noticed. I noticed pulling this out of the sheath, whether it was with my pinky or my thumb and index finger. It was just really simple to grab this little area. My brain started to recognize this sucked in area, and I was like, yep, that's where I can get a good stable grip and pull this out if my other hand is busy or if my hands were wet or whatever. You can probably actually see this thing is all grimy and gross because I do a lot of food processing, meat processing for the dogs. So my hands can be slippery. They're covered in blood and guts and whatever. So my brain understanding that little pattern right there and being like, yep, that's where I take it out, that was really useful to me. This is extremely, extremely lightweight. It's small. I, again, should have measured the total overall length, but I didn't because I suck at this YouTube thing. But here's a small Sebenza for reference, and they're nearly identical. Okay, so it's a small knife. It's literally like a small Sebenza. Okay? And the small Sebenza is small. Just an awesome knife to use. Strikes a ferro rod ridiculously well. Very ergonomic. I had no issues with not having jimping or a finger guard or anything. It has this little dip right here, this choil, so your hand kind of just locks in. And with that Coke bottle handle, you just don't, I mean, this thing's not going anywhere. The whole experience with this knife was really, really incredible. I love slimline knives. This is very sleek and slim, thin, sliced great. Kyle did an awesome job with that tapered tang there. The scales themselves are just beautiful. I actually, now that I'm talking, feel kind of bad that it's so grimy, but knowing Kyle, hopefully he'll just appreciate that it was like very thoroughly used. I think that's all blood from some organs and stuff I was processing for the dogs, and these copper pins really took a nice little patina there, but the whole thing, you know, got really, really used throughout the month. Absolutely loved it. Kyle does great work. He really does. Kyle is a great knife maker. I feel that he does beyond optimal heat treats, wonderful geometry. His craftsmanship is great, and it was just a pleasure to use. It was a really, really fun knife. There's not a ton to say about it because it's just very simple. Look at it. There's not really much to it. This is just a knife, guys. If you're just looking for a tool that will work, this is one of the best ones I've used. Super comfy, just a hell of a slicer. I'm really not a fan of things like this where they tell your fingers where to go, because not everybody's fingers are the same size. So this is almost like my worst nightmare. The Incosi, where it tells you where to put your fingers, that's like not something I enjoy. I really, really like knives like this that are just made for any human hand. Simple. So it was amazing to use. I have no negative feedback about it. Really, really happy with this one. So I guess that's kind of the end of the review there. We talked about sharpening, stropping, all of the things. Like I said, the only thing that threw me off just a hair was the way that this dulled. That's it. I was surprised that it was just a little more of like a hard, glassy dulling. Other than that, that's it. I mean, this thing was amazing to use. So I hope that you guys enjoyed that video. Let me know if you have any questions down below. I really hope that whole dulling, that categorized dulling made sense. I know it can be confusing when people call Rex 121 chippy, but then I say that in dulling it glasses out. Like I know that can be kind of like a mind fuck. It's a hard, glassy dullness though. I can't say that enough. It's like a good glassy, okay? It's a hard, good type of glassy. It doesn't feel like it's microchipping as long as you do it appropriately. But let me know what you guys think about that. Like I said, go check out Alex's channel. He's awesome. Check out Kyle from the Scrawny Lumberjack. I will link him down below. Get on his books, put in an order, but he does really sweet knives. So I guess that's it, guys. I will see you on the next video. Go use your shit. Learn how to sharpen your knives. I'll see you guys so soon. I love you so much, fam. Take care.